The rain was hammering the neighborhood when Calder Voss suddenly slammed his front door open. Water was rushing through his garage, carrying boxes, tools, and everything else across the floor. But Calder wasn't looking at the damage. He was staring across the street at the HOA's brand new drainage channel. The system that had supposedly been built to protect the neighborhood was overflowing like a broken dam, sending a powerful stream of water directly toward his property. Calder stormed outside and confronted HOA President Mara Ellison, who stood beneath an umbrella beside Maintenance Supervisor Silas Reed. "You installed that drainage system 3 weeks ago," Calder shouted, pointing toward his flooded house. Mara remained calm. "And your property is the only one flooding," she replied. Calder stepped closer. "Because your system is sending the entire street straight into my yard." Mara's expression hardened. "Watch what you're accusing us of." Before Calder could respond, Silas quietly said, "You modified your backyard grading last year." Calder stared at him. "What?" Mara pulled a document from her folder and said, "According to our records, you altered the drainage pattern on your property without HOA approval." Calder looked at the document, then at the water pouring through his garage. "You're blaming me?" Mara simply nodded. "For the damage?" "Yes." Thunder shook the neighborhood, but then Calder noticed something beneath the rushing water. A small metal access cover that wasn't shown on any HOA map. By midnight, Calder's garage was underwater. His equipment was ruined. Boxes floated across the floor, and water had already soaked through the lower walls. But the strange part was outside. The new drainage channel wasn't merely backing up. It was funneling stormwater directly toward his backyard. Calder grabbed his phone and started recording. He followed the water uphill and quickly realized that 3 streets were feeding into one drainage line. That line ended near his property. "This isn't a backup," he whispered. "They built it this way." The next morning, Calder confronted the HOA board. He placed his phone on the conference table and showed Mara the footage. "I recorded the entire drainage path. The new channel redirects stormwater toward my house." Mara barely looked at the screen. "Calder, we're not doing this." Calder leaned forward. "Then explain why the drainage line suddenly ends at my property." For the first time, Mara hesitated. "The county approved the project." Calder immediately responded, "Then show me the approved plans." Mara's expression changed. "We don't have to provide you with internal engineering documents." Calder stood up, picked up his phone, and said, "Fine. Then I'll ask the county." As he walked toward the door, Silas quietly warned him, "You really don't want to do that." Calder stopped and turned. "Why?" Silas said nothing. 2 days later, Calder visited the county stormwater office and met Nadia Mercer, a stormwater inspector. After watching Calder's footage, Nadia suddenly paused the video and zoomed in on the drainage structure. "Where is this?" she asked. "Briar Hollow Estates," Calder replied. Nadia stared at the screen. "That's strange." She opened the official project file and discovered that the drainage structure shown in Calder's footage wasn't included on the county's final inspection plan. The approved drainage route was supposed to continue toward a retention basin on the opposite side of the neighborhood. It was never supposed to end near Calder's property. Nadia told Calder she needed to investigate. That afternoon, she inspected the neighborhood herself. When they reached the metal access cover behind Calder's property, Nadia wiped away the mud and discovered a date stamped into the metal, 4 months earlier. Calder frowned. "The HOA said this system was installed 3 weeks ago." Nadia slowly looked at him. "Then someone installed this section before the project officially began." Before Calder could ask why, they heard a truck starting nearby. They turned and saw Silas Reed sitting inside an HOA maintenance truck watching them. The truck quickly drove away. That night, Calder went through every document he had: HOA notices, construction permits, maintenance emails, property maps, and inspection records. Then he found something that changed everything. An HOA email from 6 months earlier mentioned a drainage problem affecting the western section of the neighborhood. But one sentence stood out. The issue must remain internal until the acquisition is complete. Calder searched the county property records and discovered that the HOA had recently been negotiating to purchase an undeveloped strip of land behind his property. That land had one major problem. It naturally collected stormwater. The developer wanted to build another section of expensive homes there, but construction would require a costly drainage solution. Calder suddenly understood. The HOA hadn't built a new drainage system to protect the neighborhood. They had built it to move water away from the future development site, and his property happened to sit directly in the path. But there was still one question. Why blame him? The answer came the next morning, when Mara sent Calder an official violation notice, claiming that his unauthorized landscaping had obstructed the HOA drainage system. Calder almost laughed when he saw the attached photograph. It showed his backyard. But the photograph had been taken before the new drainage system was installed. Someone had deliberately used an old image to build a case against him. Calder immediately called Nadia. "They're building a case against me." Nadia paused before answering. "I know." Calder froze. "You know," Nadia replied, "because I found something else." That afternoon, Nadia arrived at Calder's house carrying a county drainage map. She pointed toward the wooded area behind the neighborhood and explained that an older stormwater line ran underneath the property. According to county records, that line was supposed to carry excess water away from the entire neighborhood. They walked into the woods and found another concrete access cover hidden beneath leaves and dirt. When Calder opened it, they discovered a large pipe, but it had been deliberately blocked by a heavy metal barrier. Calder stared in disbelief. "That's why the water has nowhere to go." Nadia nodded. "Someone blocked the original drainage route." Before they could investigate further, Calder's phone rang. It was Mara. She told him to stop digging into infrastructure he didn't understand. Calder looked down at the blocked pipe and calmly replied, "I understand it perfectly now." Mara went silent. Then she said something that chilled him. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." The call ended. Calder looked at Nadia. "She just admitted something." Nadia shook her head. "Not enough for court." Calder gave a faint smile. "Then let's get enough." That night, another severe storm appeared in the forecast. Calder knew exactly what would happen. If the HOA drainage system stayed open while the original line remained blocked, his property would flood again. But this time, he was ready. He installed cameras around the property, placed water level sensors near the drainage channel, and coordinated with Nadia, who arranged for a county inspection team to monitor the system during the storm. At 9:47 p.m., the rain began. By 10:02, the HOA drainage channel was overflowing. At 10:07, water began rushing toward Calder's property. This time, cameras captured everything. Water poured into the channel from 3 different streets, bypassed the original drainage route, and surged toward Calder's backyard. Nadia watched the data on her tablet. "There it is," she said. A massive pressure spike hit the old drainage route. Suddenly, the metal barrier holding back the original pipe bent under the pressure. A few seconds later, it broke loose with a violent crack, and thousands of gallons of water exploded through the old drainage line. Almost immediately, the water level in Calder's yard began dropping. But the broken barrier revealed something unexpected: a second metal plate hidden behind it. Nadia photographed it and discovered a contractor identification number stamped into the metal. She looked at Calder. "This belongs to the company that installed the new HOA system." Calder's eyes widened. The contractor hadn't simply built a new drainage system. They had also blocked the old one. The county investigation began the following week. Investigators uncovered contractor records showing that the drainage blockage had been installed months before the HOA officially announced the project. Emails revealed that Mara Ellison had approved the work, while financial documents showed that the HOA was preparing the undeveloped land for a future housing expansion. Calder's property had effectively been turned into the cheapest place to send the neighborhood's stormwater. But at the next HOA board meeting, Mara still tried to blame the contractor. The HOA relied on professional contractors, she said. We were unaware of any improper modifications. Calder sat silently until she finished. Then he stood and placed a small waterproof camera on the table. "That's interesting," he said. He pressed play. The footage showed Silas installing the metal barrier. Then Mara appeared in the frame and handed him a folder. Her voice was clearly recorded. "Once the new development is approved, nobody will care where the water goes." The room went completely silent. Mara's face turned pale. Calder looked around the room and said, "You didn't flood my house by accident. You needed somewhere to put the water." Mara couldn't answer. County officials eventually ordered the drainage system rebuilt, suspended the development project, and forced the HOA to cover Calder's repair costs. For a while, it seemed like the nightmare was finally over. But weeks later, while replacing damaged flooring in his garage, Calder discovered something underneath the concrete. It was another access cover, one that wasn't shown on the county maps or HOA plans. He lifted it and found a sealed plastic container inside. The container held old HOA documents, property maps, construction invoices, and a list of homeowners. Calder unfolded the final page. At the top were 4 words: Phase 2, Drainage Targets. He stared at the names. His own name wasn't on the list. Neither was Nadia's, but the first name belonged to the family living only 3 houses away. Calder immediately reached for his phone. Before he could make the call, the lights inside his house suddenly went out. He slowly looked toward the window. Across the street, a black SUV had stopped with its headlights turned off. Calder whispered, "They're not finished." And then the story loops back to that first storm. The rain is hammering the neighborhood. Water is rushing through Calder's street. Mara stands beneath an umbrella and tells him, "Your property is the only one flooding." But now the audience knows the truth. Calder looks at the hidden documents and quietly replies, "No." He pauses and looks toward the dark SUV outside. "It was just the first one." The screen cuts to black.
Subscribe the channel and press the bell icon for new updates.